Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be doing a basic data cleanup tutorial in Vicom Blade 3.4.1. However, it should work in older versions of Blade and not newer versions because this is the last version they ever released. So let's get started. We're going to go up here, we're going to click on this Blade button here. We're going to go to Data Management, then we're going to click this folder icon right here, Open a Database, and then click on browse, and I'm gonna go back for a second just so you see the files that I'm doing. So we're gonna click here on, this is where my mocap data is stored, and then this will be the base file that you create during your data management or your database setup. So I'm going to click in here, and we want to click on this first ENF file. And as you can see, this is the Eclipse hierarchy root file, and this one is the root file for our entire project. So we're going to click on that, we're going to click open, and that will load it here into our database in Blade. Click open on that, and then you'll see that it brings up the project, the capture day, the session, and then I'm going to go here and do this clip. I went through this earlier, and I think that this clip gives us some pretty good examples of how we should do some data cleanup. So you're going to want to double click on this little blue circle here, and that will load up the base capture file into Blade. But you'll see that currently, like, there's nothing here. There's nothing going on here. I'm going to X out of this so we have a better view. There's nothing really going on in this scene. We can see the cameras, we can see both the labeling bone, which is this one, and the solving skeleton, which is this one. But there's nothing here, so we're going to be up here in our post-processing tab. We're going to click on reconstruct. And the reconstruct basically just puts together all the markers, the data that the 2D data that was captured in all the cameras. It brings it all together into 3D, and it gives us what we need, which is the marker data. Now we can scroll through now, and we can see that all the marker data is there. He goes through, he falls. Some of the markers are included there when he falls, but we don't really see a body there yet. I mean, you sort of do, but we need to label all the markers. We need to make sure they're all in the correct place. And yeah, so we're gonna go here and we're gonna click Axiom Label. What Axiom Label does is it just goes through and it labels all these markers, and since we're using the Vicon default labeling setup, Vicon and its labeling algorithm knows which markers these have to be, and because it knows the placement of them on the body. So now we have that done. The labeling skeleton has snapped into there, which is good. Oh, that happened. That's an easy fix. But before we start off with anything, I'm going to do a few things. This solving skeleton is here. If we wanted to solve, we could click this button, but right now I'm not going to solve, so I'm going to uncheck the solving bone, and I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the labeling bone. And that's just because I only want to see these markers and nothing else. I'm also going to go into the Studio Activities tab, Character Management, and I'm just going to hide this gun prop over there. Just because right now we're going to be focused solely on cleaning this character data. So I'm going to click out of Character Management now, and now we have this, and now it's when I'm going to start opening some tabs. So I'm going to go back to Post-Processing, and I'm going to click on Marker Editing. So there's a good bit of things here. We're going to be mainly focusing on using the Fill Rigid key, the Fill Rigid button. So that's here. Just remember that button. Then we're going to go into the labeling editor, and we're going to want to make sure by default this icon here might be clicked, so we're going to want to unclick that. Only have the forward arrow selected. Let's go back to marker editing. To do marker data cleanup, we also need our graph editor because that shows us where the gaps are. So up here, you'll see this button right here, the two views side by side. Go ahead and click that. Now we have two perspective modes, but we don't want two perspective modes. We want a graph. So this button right here, we want to go ahead and click on that, go down to graph. And now if we zoom in and say we select the left inner elbow, then we can see every individual key on all the curves. So let's go back to frame 1 and let's go ahead and select all of these. If you read the PDF, you would see that there is a section about using hotkeys. And I went ahead and I set those hotkeys. The find gap is set to Z. But if we just click this button here, find next gap, then it'll show us exactly where the next gap is. We can go ahead and ignore this gap. This is telling us that the head is not labeled or it's missing, but the markers are there. It just became unlabeled. So if we keep going through, we can keep finding all these gaps. The selection right here shows us which marker is being occluded and which one. So that's really important when you're going through. Keep that in mind. A lot of these are the clavicle. A lot of these have to do with the torso, right? And that's mainly because right now he's bending down. As you see, there is a lot of occluded data. What was happening was, if we go back right here real quick, his arm is coming through right here, and at certain points his arm is covering up the waist marker right there. So anyways, let's go back to this head. I showed you this button here, so let's go back to when the head first gets unlabeled. So here we go. We want to make sure we're at the first frame. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. So we're at the first frame where the head becomes unlabeled. So we want to go up here. This is the auto label button. We want to go up here. We want to click right here, and then we want to say auto label current frame. And we'll see that that basically goes through and fixes the labeling for the head. And now if we go through, we basically just have to keep going through finding these gaps on the head. We could do that with this button right here. So we just always want to make sure that we're on the first frame. And we want to do that because this right here, when we select this makes it so that only the current frame and going forward are affected by labeling changes. So go back to marker editing, and auto label current frame. That's auto labeled. Let's see, find next gap, and now we see here that the clavicle is occluded. So this is something that I just learned while working. We're gonna go back here to the first frame. I do this just so it's easier to select the markers that I want to select. So because the clavicle was being occluded, this is the clavicle marker right here, by the way. I'm gonna go ahead and Alt left click and drag over the entire torso. So now all of these torso markers are selected. We're going to go over here to find next gap. We're going to see that right here, this is where the clavicle is being occluded. We're going to Alt and left click here in the graph editor. We're going to get around 3 or 4 keys before and after because that can be noisy. Then we're going to go here to cut keys. Select all of them. Cut keys. Oh wait, you know what? We're gonna go here, select these, we're gonna click cut ranges. Oh, never mind. No, we're gonna go here, select all of these, cut keys, and that will cut the clavicle before and after. So now that we have that range set, we're gonna click fill rigid. And then that will go ahead and fill in the clavicle. So if we go back here in the find next gap, we'll see that this area is now clean. So before, the next gap is right here. Same with the clavicle. So we're going to notice that there's also one right here. So we're going to select 3 before, a little after, select all of these, cut keys, and then fill rigid. And that went ahead and filled all of those. So find next gap. What is this? So this in here is now the sternum. So when you do the find next gap, it automatically selects the one that is being occluded. So this is now the sternum. So we're going to go select these. We're going to click cut keys, and then we're going to click fill rigid. So find next gap, the clavicle again. This is just one key this time. So I'm going to select just that, cut keys, fill rigid. Sternum, cut keys, fill rigid. Find next gap. This sternum. Okay, so this is sort of a big jump, but we're just gonna go ahead. We're just gonna go like that. They're gonna cut the keys. We're gonna fill this rigid. We're gonna go back through just to make sure that it looks good. Here, I'll show a little trick. So if you hold down Alt and then you right click, you bring up this menu, and I'm going to click track selection. And this will make it so we're always tracking the markers that are selected. So right now we're only tracking the torso. So the camera moves along with the torso, which is really, really nifty when you're going through and cleaning data. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to I'm gonna do the whole cleanup process, and when I get to a part that's hard, I'll start talking again about the video. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and speed this up, and yeah, sit back and relax. Oh, just a side note, the way I selected all of these right here, you want to basically do that for every section. So for the hips and the waist, I'm going to go ahead and select the hips and waist, and I'm going to do find next gap, and then I'll see that, oh, the left front waist was occluded, so we're going to cut the keys, fill rigid. I also have hotkeys set for this. So in one of my previous PDFs, I talk about the hotkeys, and I set the find next gap to my Z key. So I'm going to go ahead, do track selection. I'm going to click Z. Then it's going to show me that right there is missing. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to select these. Then I'm going to click C, X. I'm going to click X, not C. Oh, you know what? I messed up the hotkeys. So I'm just going to go through here. We're going to do this. We're going to cut keys, and then I'm going to press V. V. And then we'll see that that's there. So then we're going to do Z. Select all of these. V. Z. I'm going to select these. Oh, wait a second. Oh, never mind, that's fine. What caught me off guard was just his leg, his knee there went a little weird. So I'm just gonna go ahead, go through this data. Gonna see here. I'm gonna go ahead and switch things up. I'm going to go to different parts of the body, just show you what I select when I clean data. So I want to clean the lower arm right now. So I'm gonna select these 5 right here, the elbows, and then the wrists, and also the lower arm. Going to find the next gap. what is the next gap? So that is the left inner elbow. We're just going to select all of these right here, cut those keys, fill with a rigid. Find the next gap, inner elbow, cut those keys, fill with a rigid. Cut those keys, fill with a rigid, cut those keys, fill with rigid. Ooh, this is something great right here. So this is actually so that's actually my bad right here. So because the labeling disappeared, I went ahead and I filled rigid without realizing that the markers had actually become unlabeled. So that's something you want to watch out for. So we're going to go to the first frame where they show up again, but they're unlabeled. We're going to go up here to auto label and auto label current frame. That goes ahead and fixes that. And now we're gonna select in here and we're going to click fill rigid, and that's going to fill the rigid or that's gonna fill the markers in there. Gonna select those, gonna cut those, gonna fill those in. Ooh, okay. We have that unlabeled marker there. That is fine. Ooh, ooh. This marker right here, I'm guessing, is the prop character management. Visible, or it is actually just, it might be a reflection from the gun, it might be something like that. We don't have to worry about that. Back to marker editor, but so right here, this is what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to select these right here, the elbows. I'm going to select the upper arm, and I'm going to select the shoulders. And now we're going to find the next gap, and we see that the next gap is right here. So let's do that. We're going to cut these keys. We're going to fill them in. And what you'll see just happened is something very bad. Yeah, so what happened was the shoulder actually went away. So we're gonna select the entire torso again. Um, this one and this one. We're going to find the next gap, which is right there. When he goes to bend down, we're going to select those, we're gonna cut those, and we're gonna fill it in. Fill that in. Okay. So now we have those shoulders in there. The shoulders are all filled. I'm going to turn off tracking here for a second. And we'll see that his entire arm is sort of just gone away. So I'm going to take this unlabeled marker here, and this is more than likely the left inner elbow showing back up again. So we're going to go over here to labeling, and we're going to select the left inner elbow. And this doesn't leave us with too much marker data to go off of, especially because right here we have this disappear for a second. So we're going to go in there. We're going to find where that went away. We're just going to select all of these here. We're going to go back to marker editing, cut keys, fill that with a rigid fill. Don't worry about that. Marker right there. That is this marker right there. We could see that when it's right here, it's creating that sort of axle in between the bones. So that right there is the left elbow, which is this one right here. Once we select that, then then the arm goes ahead and reconnects. The hand right here is, we're gonna select all of these. We're going to go back to marker editing, cut keys, fill rigid. This wrist right here is out. So we're going to select that, and since that one is, we're just going to go back a bit. Right here is when this, actually there's another gap that's empty. Cut those keys, cut all of these keys, fill rigid. Actually, I just found something which is very interesting, which is a very good example. I'm going to track this hand right here. We're just going to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and right about here is when this messes up. So we can see that right here, the auto label got this mixed up. So we're going to go back to this point right here. We're going to select on this. This is the right inner hand. And when it goes right here, Blade changes it to the right outer hand. So we're going to go to the labeling editor, make that the right inner hand. Because I did that, it broke the tracking. So I'm going to go forward until we see the next, right there. Go back to the first one. Actually, if we zoom in, we can see that some of this data is bad. That's fine. We just need this hand for now. And then get a good clear view of it. And then we're gonna, ooh, look at these curves. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and gonna cut these. I'm gonna fill them like that. Gonna find the next one. I'm gonna cut these. Gonna fill that in too. I seem to have, yeah, right here. Select those. Select those. Fill those in. Yeah, so that was just a base. Oh, and here we go again. Here's another marker swap. So the right inner hand goes out to the right outer hand. So we wanna select this right here. I'm actually just gonna cut these keys right here before the swap. Cut those keys. And then right here, we want to go back to labeling. We want to set this to right inner, set that to right outer, and then we are good. We just go through here, select those, select that right there, go back to marker editing, fill rigid. And you might be wondering, like, is this all that's to mocap? Marker swap again. Wonderful. So let's go back here, fix this swap real quick. Right there. That swaps. That is the right inner. Right inner. That is right outer. And now you'll see that now that's good again. And is this motion capture? And the answer is quite honestly yes. A lot of what you're going to be doing in motion capture is this sort of work, but don't let that intimidate you. It's still a lot of fun. You have a great time doing it. Believe it or not, it becomes a very, very calming thing to do. You could probably notice when I was using the hotkeys, I was getting really into it. I was doing it really fast. There's a lot more data cleanup I can do on this, especially when it comes down here and this happens and half of his body disappears. But I'm going to go ahead and call that quits for now. I've been going for 24 minutes, and I hope I went over the basics of cleaning data and showed the necessary things. So thanks for watching the video. The next video, I'm probably going to go ahead and clean up this part right here when it goes all crazy wonky, when he's laying on the ground and all this data's gone, everything will freak out. But for now, went ahead and cleaned the first part of this. Still some bad hand data, but that's fixed so easily. So thanks for watching, and see you around.